They were not aware that they were forgetting things. They're not aware that they were yelling. They're not aware that they were fighting. They would like fight and then they would forget it. But, I remember all the times they would fight, even though they wouldn't remember, and I think that is also tough where like you're experiencing something and it's almost like the people you're with are not even in that present moment with you because they're not even really processing it the same way. And I think that was hard being like, wow, I am affected more.
Welcome, Vora, to the Travel Through Trauma podcast. You are one of our most recent clients who has completed our 4-month program, and I'm really excited to hear all about your journey. I would love to know kind of what was your mental, emotional, physical state as you started the program, or even when you had applied for the program the previous year, given that we had already slots filled. It took us a while to get you onboarded.
So much has changed in this last like year and a half. But definitely at the time, I was really struggling with navigating my godparents, my grandparents, Alzheimer's and dementia. And I felt I wasn't able to support in the household in ways that I wanted to. And it was also very taxing on me as I was like trying to help around the house and help with a lot of that care, but wasn't, it was just kind of beyond my capacity. And I think knowing I needed to make a transition there, a change there, both like relationally with my family and also like physically, I ended up needing to move to enact that change. And that was like a huge transition because I've been with my family for like the last like 5 or 6 years. And they did not want me to leave. They didn't want me to move, understandably. But it was just getting a little too much for me. And I think making that decision to, hard as it is, but prioritize your own well being was definitely challenging, and asking for help and then setting boundaries and saying, well, this is my capacity to help. Anything beyond this, I'm not able to participate, in that way. So that was really, really hard. I think anytime you have to renegotiate your relationships, set those boundaries, and especially with people who may not be like 100% well or kind of understanding of that is also tricky to navigate.
Yeah, I think there's not enough discussion around the young adult caretakers of older family members who do struggle with diseases like dementia. I think it is one of the most painful things to watch in a family member degrade in that way. And then for you to have 2 people that you have to take care of by yourself and live with them. I mean, I can only imagine the mental and emotional burden you must have carried every day, just having to like keep your head above water and retain your identity. Do you feel like identity was like a big thing, a big reason why you had to step away and just kind of discover yourself? Or did you feel really sure still of like your decision,
No, I mean, it
even
was not
when you were
a
making that
clear-cut
difficult
choice at
choice?
all. I think I did have a lot of support from my aunt and
Hmm.
my surrounding family members. I think also, when a person is kind of compromised with Alzheimer's and dementia, they're not able to control their anger. They're not able to control their irritation. They struggle with forgetting where things are, and that frustration just kind of comes out, And if you are in a house like this, then I think it's pretty obvious that you'll be affected by, shouting, complaining, and the people, my grandparents, who I love very much, were also not aware that they were doing these things. They were not aware that they were forgetting things. They're not aware that they were yelling. They're not aware that they were fighting. They would like fight and then they would forget it. But, I remember all the times they would fight, even though they wouldn't remember, and I think that is also tough where like you're experiencing something and it's almost like the people you're with are not even in that present moment with you because they're not even really processing it the same way. And I think that was hard being like, wow, I am affected more in in some ways because I actually have a memory of all of the times they've forgotten. I have a memory of all the times they're fighting. I have a memory of these things where maybe they're kind of just not retaining that, so it's not affecting them almost as much. And that's also hard to explain, But I think
Yeah.
regardless, it's hard on everybody.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's a very valid experience to have when somebody's degrading in that way, because my grandma also has Alzheimer's and dementia, and she might not have had angry outbursts, but it was impossible for me to navigate understanding like she's experiencing something that I may never or hope to never understand. And I'm getting frustrated because this thing happened 2 seconds ago and she's not remembering it. And it's like, how do you have that space to be empathetic and compassionate, but also like retain your sanity and not feel like you're losing your mind in the process? Because it can be, it can alter your sense of reality, I'm sure, to be around that every single day. And I'd love to know just like what was that moment that you realized that you needed that support, you needed to change and step outside that environment? Was there like a breaking point or specific experience you were having
I mean,
that helped you
unfortunately,
get
I think
there?
for me, it was more frog in boiling water situation where like it slowly was getting worse and worse. And I could see that, it was not going to get better. It was going to get worse. And my family was also not willing to hire help, you know? And so that meant that our family would have to step in more, like my aunt, my uncle, and myself. There was no way to care for them without doing more and more and more. And I think after a couple of disagreements on the approach of how that care should be made, I felt like, you know what? The reality is, I'm the granddaughter. I'm not the, legal guardian. And my decisions, my impact is limited in this case. And if my effort is not going to be considered in the way that I'd like it to be, the best thing to do is to remove that, because as much as I do want to help, at the end of the day, it's not my decision fully. So I think I felt like, okay, I really need to redirect this energy, and hopefully also, yeah, just kind of like recenter and reinvest in the things that I enjoy about life.
Yeah, your creativity, your expression. Do you find that once you came to that difficult decision, your family was supportive in
No,
you
they were
needing to
not.
step away from that environment?
I wouldn't say that. And I think that's part of it. I for months after I moved, my grandma would call and be like, "Where are you? Why aren't you home?" Like, "You moved, that's horrible. Why?" And I would try to explain it, and it would just lead to us fighting. And that, I think, I had to rely on my extended family, my mom, my dad, my other parents, to have them be like, "Look, it's not worth having that conversation," you know because my grandma would tell me, we don't yell, we don't fight. No, 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 we're totally fine. We also don't need help. And yeah, in that case, okay, you know. So I had to learn that that is maybe the most loving thing to do, is just to accept, that that's her experience, that's her perspective right now. And if I'm struggling with it, I should get the help that I need.
Yeah. And with regards to getting the help that you need, were you already doing therapy and other forms of like coaching and wellness before you had started Travel Through Trauma to kind of navigate what was going
No, at
on
the
in your
time
life
I
with
was
your
not.
grandparents?
No, I was just working and, yeah, trying to navigate it best I could.
Hmm. Well, I'm really glad that you did apply to Travel Through Trauma, and I hope that it was beneficial in you like navigating some of this. But I would love to know, like, in the 4 months that you were part of this program, what were some of the experiences that really stood out to you or impacted you the most? We had so many different aspects
Yeah.
to our curriculum. Was there any one particular session or one
Wow. I
particular type
mean,
of
it
coaching
was
that
kind of
benefited you?
insane because the 4 months, I almost feel like it was like it almost felt planned, because the 4 months that I was with Travel Through Trauma was probably like the most amount of change I experienced like in my last like 18 months of so previously I was working, I
Whoa.
had a pretty steady part-time job for the last like year and a half. I was also building my side project, which is called Water and Power Community Space. And then, right when we started Travel Through Trauma, I lost my job. I had to move. And then, like, I got in a car accident, like, pretty much like all within the first month of that. And so, yeah, I think working with Alison, who's the therapist, and, Justin, just like helping me stay really grounded in both like my sleep, my eating, my mental well being was really crucial during like all of that change, just that encouragement of like, you may have these gauntlets, you may have these challenges now, but, you're going to come out of the other side. I think I'm still coming out of the other side, but yeah, I think, and then in talking about what shifted, um, I moved twice. I'm in a much better housing situation now. I'm paying less rent and with people who are very clean, very respectful. I kind of invested a lot more time into my side project, made it into a nonprofit, and that was like between December and January. And then at the same time, I also was able to go on my first tour, like big international tour in Asia, which had been like in talks or in plan for the last like 2 years, but just nothing kind of really panned out, worked out. And then it's like all at once, all of that happened over the course of like those 3, 4 months.
That's intense. I mean, moving alone is one of the great, like life's greatest stressors, but to like have everything else that you are navigating on top of that and all while travel through trauma was already
It did
active, it's
feel
like what
very
auspicious timing that
it
you were
was
able to get some
very
support
planned. It
through
felt
those
very like,
transitions.
oh wow. And also I
Yeah.
think because I wasn't working, I had more like time in the beginning to kind of integrate and try and experiment with a lot of, like the learnings and the modality. So that was really cool as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned like Julian's health and fitness coaching, Allison's therapy. Was there any other type of coaching or life skills training that you got that felt it impacted you the most or like was kind of gave
I
you a
mean, I
light
feel
bulb
like I
moment or a
had that with
mindset shift of some sort?
almost everybody I worked with kind of at different points. I think the financial coaching was really empowering as
Mm.
well, just to feel like more confident about having a plan. I wasn't really sure how much Spanish I would be able to use before going to Costa Rica, but just the couple of sessions. I mean, I'm obviously not fluent and didn't like magically learn Spanish, but being able to recognize words and phrases and just do basic, counting and greetings was more than I probably would have done alone. So I think, all of these things added up for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And like the Spanish is not designed to make anybody fluent in
Mhm.
just several sessions, but just to get a little bit more confidence and navigating the basics and knowing that you can and learning some stuff from a native speaker. But I'm glad that every aspect of the program gave you something that was worthwhile because I know depending on like what phase of life you're in, what you're navigating can really determine like what sits most with you long term.
With Julian, because I think we were kind of
Mm.
navigating similar transitions of going from like having something more stable to really investing in your passion project, your freelancing. And Julian was sharing a lot about their journey, doing sales for coaches and coaching. And I think seeing also somebody in my similar age group and talking about that transition together also was really empowering of like, oh wow, there are people doing that, and just that support I think also helped push me to, form the 501(c)(3) and actually go through with it. And yeah, I don't know. That was really cool. It was really cool, and I really appreciated them offering, like even after stay in touch.
Yeah, he's a very inspirational person. We're super lucky to have Julian on the team. He always brings such like a refreshing perspective to everything. And I'm glad that you guys were both navigating and leaning on each other for that transition because it's a huge deal to have to leave something that feels stable and reliable to really bet on yourself and say, I'm going to take a chance on this. It might not pan out, but it might pan out. And I'm hoping for the latter. And we're just going to go gun ho. At least you know you did everything you could to invest in yourself and do your best. So congrats on building that 501(c)(3). It is no joke having a nonprofit. And I know what goes into the paperwork, the filings, all that stuff. Just that alone is a lot. But then to like actually do the thing that you set out to
And
do is a
I'm
whole
also
other
so
ordeal. So
grateful,
congrats on that.
to travel through trauma. Like everybody has been so supportive. Jonathan was also one of the first to like pledge support, and offer it in. And, whether it's like
Mm,
financial or like
that's
kind of more
awesome.
coaching or emotional, I think everybody really contributed to that.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I'd love to continue
Yeah.
supporting you with your nonprofit too. We'll definitely have to connect offline about that more. So you had been traveling before you joined Travel to Trauma. You had experiences doing smaller solo trips here and there, even going international, which is different maybe than some of our other clients who had never experienced that before. So given that you already had some of that experience, what was your mental state going into this Costa Rica solo trip? Were you nervous or fearful, or were you just very relaxed and
Yeah, I
confident about
think
how it would turn
although
out?
I had traveled, and study abroad when I was in college and gone kind of domestically by myself, but this was my first time going internationally solo. And so that was something I was nervous about. Definitely, like, I kind of thought Costa Rica would be a little bit more like it was tourist friendly, but it was definitely also very like you got to figure it out. And I was also very like, I think at this stage of my life where I work a lot with community, I work a lot with immigrant community, low income community artists, and like with everything that's been happening with ICE, I was just like also very aware of like the US presence in Costa Rica and how that like affects tourism, how that affects like everything. So I think I also had like a lot of like reflection on that as I was like experiencing the country. Such like one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. But it was really interesting to see, I think also so many people from the US there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it has a pretty big tourist sector, but it's like the perfect balance where you're
Mhm.
still kind of remote, especially when you start going into more of those smaller towns and still having to navigate a lot of things, but you have a lot of the comforts of having a country with strong tourism. So, was there like a moment while you were on your 2 week journey where maybe you had like a moment where you truly felt or empowered or surprised
Yeah,
with
I think
yourself and the journey?
I'm pretty emotional when it comes to like I don't know, doing things like this, but on during the beginning of the trip, I think one of the things I've historically struggled with is like going on solo hikes. I've always felt like a little nervous about that, struggled with that. And during the beginning of the trip, I went to the butterfly garden, the Spirogug Butterfly Garden, and I was just like moved to tears by seeing the butterfly. Like it was just so beautiful. And like so magical. And I went on a small hike by myself, and surprisingly there was like no one else there. Like I was the only one on the trail. I went down to the river and I just sat there for I don't know, maybe an hour or two, just like enjoying that solitude, enjoying the water, the sun. Yeah, that was like really impactful for me. That was such a beautiful moment. And then I went back up and saw one person, two people.
What did that moment teach you about
I think
yourself
it
that you
was
didn't know before?
more that I accessed a feeling that maybe is not I'm not usually able to access by myself when I'm by myself at home. But just this like feeling of like gratitude, contentment, like peace. Like I don't need to rush and be anywhere. There's nothing wrong. I don't need to check my phone. I don't need to distract. I can just like really be with the land, be with the water, be with myself, and like all is well. And I think that is like such a gift when you can access that state.
Yeah, exactly. I think even when we try to practice presence in our day to day life, there's always some sort of obligation looming over our head and something that we have to do right after. But when you're like traveling, you can truly disconnect in ways that you can't when you're just alone at home. So I'm really glad that you had such a spiritual experience with the butterflies. Like, what a beautiful symbolic way to start your journey in Costa Rica. Were there any other challenges that came up throughout the trip where you felt overwhelmed or you were scared and then you were able to kind of navigate through
Yeah,
it
there
and
were so many
learn
of
something
those
from it?
also. I think one of the main challenges for me was like the transportation. I think I am used to kind of a I'm spoiled. I'm used to kind of this Western standard where like the bus times and the times of things are listed. and you can check it on your phone. You can see it on the map. So I missed the shuttle bus twice when I needed to transfer places. And so the shuttles were sold out, and shuttles meaning like a around $70 shuttle to get to place A to B. So I took the local buses, and the local buses had no schedule. They had no timetable, no Google Maps. And so it was all word of mouth. So, the hostel owner would be like, oh, yeah, you show up at this bus station, have this much in cash, good luck. And then I show up, there's no stop, there's no signage. You just have to like figure it out. But I was able to do it, and I am proud of myself. I saved a little bit of money, got to where I needed to go, um, and it all worked out.
Man, you took the rough route. We normally offer that you do like the private van transportation coordinated by the hostel, but the buses are no joke in Costa Rica. I have taken the buses, and like you said, there's like no timetable, but also I had no idea if I was at my
There's no,
destination. I was like
yeah,
just looking on the Google map and be like, am I close enough? Yeah, there's no signage. It just stops in the middle of like an alleyway, and then people start coming on and off. I'm
yeah,
like, oh, I guess this is a stop that I can take. And I remember
yeah,
taking a wrong stop and having to walk like 45 minutes because I just was like,
yeah.
I
And
don't know if
there's
there's
just
another stop
signal,
coming up
like in
or
certain
if this
areas
is the
has
only
to
one
stop.
within a
So
certain
the
vicinity.
thing about that too is the
No,
shuttles would sell out. So I
right.
know that I had to make the reservation a couple, or
Mm,
like I should have made it the first day I got there to take it the second by the third day. So they would just sell out when there was like no other choice, right? So I was like, it's fine. I'll just take the bus. But that was definitely an adventure. It was definitely an adventure. But I do feel like more confident for it. Like, okay,
yeah.
I can take the bus in a place with no sign and no documentation, and do it with very little Spanish. So it's doable.
Yeah. I think there's a reason we don't coordinate all the transportation is because there's one, the flexibility that you want to have to figure it out. But also, once you learn the skill of navigating city to city in a second or third world country, everything else in life just becomes so much easier because you realize, like, I am capable of getting myself somewhere safely, even when I have like little to no access to like service or to the language or to like the custom of how this route goes. So props to you for navigating that because that is no joke at all.
I
I
mean,
would never
it
take the
was
bus system
interesting
again in
because
Costa Rica.
it was also vastly more affordable. Like I think was it I think La Fortuna to Manuel Antonio, there's like a shuttle that's like 5 hours. But instead of that, I did three
Mhm.
buses. And so the bus would like transfer. So I also do think that I got to see, something slightly different maybe than other people.
Yeah, for sure. And you get to be surrounded by locals in that process rather than other tourists,
I
which
didn't
is
make it. I
its
didn't
own
get to the bus.
experience too. Yeah. What was your favorite city to
I
visit in
think
Costa Rica?
I loved being at the volcano in La Fortuna. I wouldn't really call it I mean, I guess it's like a little tourist town. Yeah. But I loved
Or like a
the nature
town?
there.
Yeah.
I just every day I was like out there by the waterfall, horseback riding, hiking, swimming. I wish I could have stayed there longer. I mean, I'm sure everybody says that. But yeah, I really, really loved, I think, just the magnificence of the mountain and the magnificence of the waterfalls. It's interesting that everything is privately owned there also. Like there's no really a public investment in like a public national
Mm.
park. It's all kind of private tour companies. And that was interesting as well. Like you get a wristband, you have to stay with your group. It's not like you just pay and you walk yourself in some of these places. So that was interesting to experience too. But I just, being on the land was so special.
Yeah. What do you think that in your experience solo travel offered that maybe you couldn't get mentally, emotionally, spiritually from other
Oh my
aspects
gosh, I
of
mean, it's
the
just
4 month
so
program?
it's so expansive and it's so compact, like in such a short amount of time. I think when you're traveling, like you're so present because you're forced to just like navigate the unfamiliar all the time, right? I think in a 4 month program, you're kind of actually doing the opposite, where you're in your mundane life or your average life, and then you're kind of trying to highlight and bring out little things that you'd like to change and things you'd like to improve on within this like context of the known. But when you're traveling, you're in this like giant context of the unknown and you're like swimming and like just grasping for things to kind of like keep, yourself afloat. And that can be really challenging, but also really exciting, you know. I think,
Yeah. Especially when you come out of the other side and you're like in one piece, you're like, oh
yeah,
shoot,
I
I
think it
survived
also
that. Like, what
refreshes
else can
you.
I
You
survive?
kind of get a reset in terms of like what is normal to you, what you get perspective on, you know. I think I always get perspective no matter where I go on how much privilege we have as US citizens in the US and at what cost our privilege comes at, the cost to other countries, the cost to other people, and how it's like, I don't know, important for us to remember that. Something I'm like always aware of. I think every time I leave and come back, even that ability to leave and come back is in itself like a huge privilege.
Exactly. Absolutely. And I think even the most impoverished of those who live in the United States are still more wealthy in a lot of ways than maybe some of the other types of poverty that the world experiences. And it's truly important to be able to reflect on that and understand like we have so much to be grateful for. We have access to so many resources. And it's a shame when somebody can't get access to it in the same way. Yeah, I think it's a very important perspective to have as well. Do you think now that you've come back from that trip and you've finished your 4 month program, has it given you a different perspective to the original trigger for joining this program, which was your grandparents experiencing Alzheimer's and dementia?
Yeah,
Has
I
it
think it's
changed
changed
anything
so
there?
much. I think I feel very aligned these days in terms of what I'm doing and working for. I am still looking for a job while building up the nonprofit community space and like trying to find ways to sustain myself financially. But I think I have a lot more kind of like trust and confidence that like just keep following the golden thread, the next step, take asking for help, putting the work in, and I feel a lot more, I think, grounded as well. Like my living situation, one of the reasons I was really struggling is like my previous living situation with my grandparents. I didn't feel like safe at home to like work on music, to invite people over, to, do the things I like historically love to do. And again, that is in itself such a gift that they provided for me all of those years. And I think, coming back into a space where I just like can wake up, meditate, do my practice, exercise, and like really focus on the work that I need to do is like an enormous gift. So I feel a lot more grounded, a lot more centered, and I think ready to do the work I need to do to build up my project.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's just the beginning. And I hope that Travel to Trauma is just able to offer some insight into what you're capable of, what resources are out there to help you with your journey. What would you say is like one major lesson that you're taking away from this 4 month program about yourself?
The word that's coming to mind is like flexibility. I think oftentimes when you make goals or you have like a program and you have something that you want to achieve, you kind of lay out, you lay out a plan, you lay out a strategy, and it can be easy to get frustrated when like things don't happen as planned or milestones aren't met or like people don't show up as hoped for. And that can, I think, trigger a lot of frustration or anger or anxiety. And I think I really tried to lean into flexibility and compassion, both for myself and other people involved, which is like, everybody's going through a tremendous amount of, stuff in their own life. And the more I can be flexible with myself, the more I can extend that flexibility to other people. It's never personal, just that spaciousness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think having that self compassion is always going to help us feel more compassion for the world because we can't give to others what we can't give to ourselves. And so I think flexibility is a perfect word for that. What advice would you give to somebody who is considering travel through trauma, but maybe they're scared of the travel component or they're not really sure about what experience they're going to get?
I would say that you can trust yourself. You can trust your excitement. You can trust your fear to show you where your growth edge is. You can trust your nervousness to point to something that's important to you, all of those things are really important signals and parts of your journey, and it's okay to embrace all of them. It's part of life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think none of those emotions that we're experiencing need to be turned down. I think every single one of them have a place in our lives and our psychology, and it's always an invitation. And I always say it's not about not having fear going into something like this, especially the travel component. It's about having the bravery and the courage to still walk through that fear and know that like you're going to be supported and you're going to be able to handle it, finding your own resourcefulness. So thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. And I'm so glad that this program was able to come into your life at such a transition and be able to support your growth. And I'm super excited to see where your nonprofit goes, where your artistry goes. And I feel like this is just the beginning of such an
I agree. I feel like that
amazing
as
few
well.
years.
And I'm really grateful. Like, I also want to say, like, this is such an innovative initiative. This is such a, like, I think cutting edge and groundbreaking program that everybody who I talk to about it is like gagged. They're like, are you serious? You got like wellness coaching and you got to go to this trip? Like, this is literally the thing that everybody wants. And it is that magic. So keep at it. If there's any support, will.
Thank you. We're very proud. Yeah, it's just the beginning for us too. And if you ever want to recommend us to others, we would love that. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And we'll definitely continue collaborating with our nonprofits and just growing together in the years to come. Thank you.